A week has passed, and things have mostly gone back to normal, except for the new addition to the family. When the griffin baby flies over and wakes up Prince Arel, he greets the newest member of their family. Arel picks up the little griffin, and though he can't just sleep like he used to, he forgives the baby for being so cute and well-behaved. The story then goes back to that night. Arel tells the guards to take Kania to rest while he makes sure no wild animals will disturb the fallen griffin's body. As the guards set up camp, Arel carefully cuts open the griffin's chest with his sword and takes out its magical core. Arel knows the core will help him tame the newborn griffin. While Arel plays with the cub, he sees Kania arriving at the castle. She quickly gets out of her carriage, and the griffin baby excitedly greets her. As Kania spends time with the cub, Prince Arel hears about a wanted order across the kingdom. A bounty is placed on the Dark Church, the group behind the attack on Kania, with rewards for anyone who knows where they are. Prince Arel notes that the Dark Church isn't the only group causing trouble for the kingdom. He suddenly wonders if he's been too focused on wealth. A guard, overhearing him, asks what he means, but Arel just sends him away like it doesn't matter one bit. As Princess Kania finally catches the griffin, Arel thinks about why someone would target her, considering she doesn't hold much power or influence. Still, she's a princess and part of his family. He starts thinking that maybe he should become a sword master and try to become an aura expert by the time he's in his late 20s. Arel, trying his best to change the topic, approaches Kania and asks if she wants to do something fun. Kania asks what he has in mind, and moments later, swords are clashing, and some mana kinda appears around their blades. Kania notices the surge and starts to think about it, but before she could finish, they both pull back after one last strike. Kania excitedly asks how she did, and Arel happily tells her he used his aura. He secretly enjoys how well his plan worked and how she bought it. She asks him if she could learn it too, and wonders where Arel studied it. He vaguely replies, saying something like that, then explains that using aura mostly relies on the brain. Kania, a bit discouraged, assumes she can't do it because she's not smart enough. Arel reassures her, saying that's not the case. Kania jokes that it's just because he's a genius, but Arel explains that she just needs to learn how to control the aura with her brain, and he'll teach her. Excited, Kania asks if she'll be able to master it quickly. Arel tells Kania that if she follows his method, she'll master aura quickly. Secretly, he thinks about why her progress is so fast. He's been quietly transferring mana into her. He tells her to focus and follow his guidance. Meanwhile, Kania's guard eavesdrops on their conversation from behind closed doors. Weeks pass, and whenever Kania visits Fly, she trains in both swordsmanship and aura with Arel. Kania becomes an aura user at an amazing speed. One day, while looking at her sword she asks if this is the power of aura. Arel congratulates her but reminds her that this is just the start of her journey. One unexpected result of their training is that Fly temporarily grows after being exposed to the strong energy from aura practice. Fly rests on Arel's shoulder, and he complains about the griffin's weight, even if it shrinks back down. Arel tells Kania that mastering aura is only the first step. They need to train harder to control their strength, movement, and use aura to its fullest. Kania may even be able to use aura while riding Fly. She laughs at Arel's bold imagination, but he insists he's serious. While petting Fly, Kania asks if Arel is right. In his mind, Arel believes that day will come soon. Suddenly the door suddenly opens, and a voice announces that His Majesty has arrived, surprising both Arel and Kania. Arel wonders why the king is there, as he should be busy with his preparations in the north and not just stopping by for a breath of fresh air. The king enters with Lady Rifana, and our boy respectfully greets him. The king says that he's heard they've been practicing swordsmanship lately. Arel downplays their training, saying it's been minimal, and that he's mostly been working on experiments and trying to tame the griffin for border defense. The king seems pleased, wanting to see Arel's progress in different areas. Just then, two servants bring in a large chest. They set it down, and both Arel and Kania are surprised by what's inside. With a serious expression, the king tells Arel to try the sword. It's a special weapon made just for him. Lady Rifana protests, saying Arel's too young to use such a sword. But the king laughs, saying he doesn't expect Arel to wield it yet. He just wants Arel to touch it as its owner. Arel casually picks up the sword, shocking everyone. As he holds it, Arel wonders if it's time to take swordsmanship more seriously from now on. The king is surprised about Arel's interest in the sword that was gifted to him and figures he might have some potential in swordsmanship. But all that potential goes when Arel falls over with the sword and figures that he should probably abandon swordsmanship in his current life. Since he's already good at other things, learning the sword will only put him in the battle royale that is the struggle for the throne. So he has to act as the weak little brother. Even when he's training, he can't let his effort go to waste, so he thanks his father for the gift, but mentions that swords aren't his thing. So he suggests that the sword should be given to Kania instead. She has a load of potential and has been improving pretty fast. I mean, her skill even gives other knights second thoughts about their jobs. Seeing Arel's decision, the king accepts this on the condition that Kana should show that she is worthy of the sword. This sudden decision shocks Kana and Arel, but Arel remembers that the king is also pretty strong as a swordsman, so a duel has pretty much been declared and all Kana has to do is swing her sword. Even with that, Kana begins to panic, so Arel pats her on the back and encourages her to display her skills to her father and probably beat up an old man. So the two of them prepare for the showdown, and the king notices that her stance is different from the classic knights. Just from that, he already knows that she is going to use an enhanced sword technique. With that, the duel officially begins, and Kana dashes towards her father at a very fast speed thanks to her physical strength and explosive mana. But Arel wonders if it really is the best idea to attack the head first, plus they are using real swords. Instead, the king stands there and smiles like the Chad he is before defending against Kania's attack. She is shocked by this, seeing that her opponent is also using aura. The king commends her blow but still deflects her to the floor like it's nothing. He is impressed with the fight his daughter put up since he's got to use aura on a level that he hasn't used even on people like knight captains. Kania figures that she still has much to learn. The king mentions the fact that Arel has been teaching Kania, and he was using a different way of teaching since the normal method wasn't working for her. With that said, the king asks if Arel can teach his method to others. Arel on the other hand realizes that his father actually wants to create an unstoppable army of aura experts using his training method. But there is no way he's going to teach them. So, Arel apologizes and explains that it will be difficult to achieve the same results with Kana since she already had potential from the start. Plus, he has been observing her ever since they were together, so that's how she was able to improve so quickly. But the truth is, it doesn't take much observation to come up with a suitable training method, and he would rather do anything than scar his eyes looking at a bunch of macho knights. Even with the disappointing news, Arel still wishes to give his father some hope, so he decides to share an improved training schedule but mentions that it's only for royalty, since sharing a secret training method with the other aristocrats will only mean trouble. So the king eventually agrees to his condition, and Arel is honored that his training technique will now be passed down to different generations in the royal family. But still, he laughs at the fact that the training they will pass through will be something else entirely. A few months later, the king is training, and a couple of maids witness the chaos. From how he's wrecked training dummies and the entire room itself, he finds the training method to be effective and has even reached the last stage as an aura expert. Unfortunately, Arel cannot use the training program because of his weak body, and the king believes he needs the training more than anyone else, so he decides to do something about it. Later on, Arel has some tea with Kania and is shocked when he learns that he will be assigned a personal guard. There are tons of people who volunteered for the position. Arel takes a look at the applications. He knows that most of the knights there are big shots. Arel feels accomplished about how his reputation has really improved, but he doesn't see the need of having a bodyguard. But he doesn't want to show off his powers or what happened the last time to repeat itself, so he gets to pick a maximum of 3 bodyguards. While he goes through the documents, he decides to do interviews so he can take their skills, character, and traits into account. As the cultured individual he is, Arel doesn't need a million IQ to know that he would want the ladies to be his guards. However, the others do not know what he has in mind. With that, he finally leaps onto the table and decides to get the plan moving. When it's time for the interviews, Arel begins to wonder what he has just signed up for. Even though they are most likely quality knights, they are definitely not the slender damsels he imagined them to be. I mean, you can't blame them. They've probably spent all their lives training. So Arel puts his wishes away and starts the interview. He takes a look at all of the ladies, and they all look strong enough to fold him 8 times while they state their reasons for applying to be his guard. He takes a look at them, including this one guard that makes the king look like a lost child. As the interviews go on, Arel spots one noble-looking knight who has a much different aura compared to the other knights. So far, the interview has been going well, so Arel asks all the candidates to wait outside while he makes a decision. When everyone leaves, he casually uses a chi technique that gives him Albert Einstein-level IQ. Normally, it would take decades to master, but he casually casts it as the master of isekais that he is. After that, he tells the knights to come in one at a time for the next stage of the interviews. He is sure that some of the knights have other plans in mind, so he wants to find who's sus among them. Using his technique, he picks out the knights that appear to be suspicious. His technique, clairvoyance, allows him to see the color of their souls and emotions. Fortunately, they don't have any plans to assassinate Arel, but just to spy on him. The next candidate comes up, and the color of her soul is crystal clear, so clear that even Arel is dumbfounded. The knight's name is Asha Fernil, and my guy has finally found a perfect candidate. At this point, Asha is pretty much top of the line, but he still needs to pick out 2 other knights. He considers picking that one buff lady from earlier since her color was also clear. Suddenly, another knight steps in. She introduces herself as Sena Garil, the last candidate, Arel also notes that her energy is clear as well, and it doesn't take a genius to know that she is a lively person. Looking at her past experience, Arel points out how she's been in almost every order of knights in the kingdom, and even been dispatched to distant territories, but still, he can tell from her color that she hasn't done anything wrong, so he can forget about why she has been transferred so often. With that, Arel concludes the interview and announces his choices. He presents his two choices, Asha and Sena. The new recruits join the palace and they are off to a good start in their job, but he still wants to make an improvement. He brings them to some place and reveals that he wants them to demonstrate their skills to him. Since they are his personal guards, he wants them to be the very best that no one ever was. To demonstrate their skills, Arel asks them to have a duel with each other, and they agree with this idea. Like the mastermind that he is, he figures that holding a sparring match between two people of similar skill means that they can go all out. So to make sure things remain intense, he mentions that he is curious to see who is stronger, as if he hasn't thought of this plan like how someone like Aizen does his things. That statement struck a nerve in both of them since true knights are sure to be proud of their skills. The tension gets heated between them just as Arel planned, and they also are curious to see who is the top dog. Meanwhile, Arel is pumped to watch the epic showdown that is about to unfold, so he sits back to enjoy the show. Before the duel begins, the knights ask if there are any rules to follow as they prepare themselves. They look eager to win, but Arel continues to stuff his face and mentions that they can do anything they want as long as they don't go overboard. With that in mind, the fighters prepare for their epic duel. Arel notes the intense mood between the two of them, and he believes that they are going to fight for real, so he tries warning them again. So Arel claps his hands to signal the start of the match, and Bro is launched away, even though he told them not to go overboard. He understands that's how knights pretty much are. Now it's to watch the fight unfold. Asha lunges in with her spear, and Sena spots this move. She punches Asha's spear out of the way like a feral beast. With a grin, Sena has found the perfect chance. She closes into Asha to give a punch that will end Asha's career early. Since Asha uses a spear, it will be difficult for her to respond. My guy is still munching away on his popcorn and wonders if she has anything up her sleeve. Luckily she does. She kicks Sena's fist away, which causes her to retreat. Arel, who is still watching the duel, figures that they are being a bit too serious. He can tell that their aura is getting too powerful and they'll probably execute each other before they can stop. So Arel stops the match. He now has an understanding of their skills and can set up a few improvements. From his observations, he notes that Asha is impatient because she focuses too much on speed, and Sena hesitates a little since he mainly throws hands. Basically, one is too fast and the other is too slow. After the remarks, Asha recalls that he helped Kana improve, so she figures that he asked for a demonstration of their skills to help them improve. Apparently her improvement has become famous among the knights, and Arel also wants his guards to improve just like that. So he leads the both of them to begin their special training session. On the first stage, they are going to be learning theory stuff about mana. Arel presents his signature manual and plans to start a business if it works out well. However, there is no hope that they'll ever understand the book they are reading. In the end, Arel decides to explain things himself to his two guards concerning mana, including what could happen if aura is misused, how to use it more effectively, and whatever. With that explanation out of the way, Arel suggests that what they need to do next is to absorb the mana that exists all around nature, so they can learn how to use it efficiently. He guarantees that learning that is enough to completely change how they use aura. After the lecture, Arel decides to give his guards custom lessons for another part of the training. Arel begins with Sena to teach her how to focus aura better. She mentions that she is already capable of forming aura easy enough. Arel asks her to spread her aura to all her limbs at the same time, an epic fail. Normally, it is not hard to cover the entire body in aura, but that will quickly exhaust the user. So people usually focus it on areas they need. Sena fails to perform the task, and mentions that her senses will become unstable if she focuses on too many places at once. So Arel puts his palms together with hers and shows her a trick to focus aura. And just like that, she manages to channel her aura to both of her hands. Now that Sena has been sorted out, next on the list is Asha. Arel tells her that she is too impatient since she tried to resort to hand-to-hand combat against an opponent who is skilled in that aspect. An obvious mistake, so she has to learn how to remain composed, which explains why she's carrying Arel for her training. He wants her to focus and not pay any attention to anything that is bothering her. So basically, he just wants her to stock up on it is what it is energy. While all that's going on, Queen Elia receives a letter about what Arel has been up to. She originally left him alone since someone as insignificant as him didn't bother her, but now, he's becoming a problem. So, she burns up the letter and finally decides to do something about him. Then there's Asha, who can notice a difference in her strength after following the prince's guidance. After all, this is Arel's training we're talking about here. Even though it appears pointless, The innocent tree that has been shattered is enough to testify to her increase in strength. In a bit of background check, we learn that Asha was a daughter of House Fernil, a family that wasn't very wealthy and lived in a small countryside region. Because of a famine, monsters attacked them and everything went downhill pretty much from there. What's even worse is that the aristocrats who kept in contact with House Fernil abandoned them. In the end, Asha joined the knights to make ends meet. The good news is that she was talented in combat, so she quickly awakened her aura and was stationed in the royal capital. But the bad news is that she was placed in the order with the worst knights. Even the captain wasn't worth calling a captain. Even with how old he is, he's still an aura beginner and only had his position because of a few officials who were fortunate to put him there. This memory doesn't sit well with Asha, so she takes out her aggression on an innocent tree and plans to make her captain resemble the tree the next time she spots him. She applied to be a personal guard out of desperation, but who knew she would get chosen at the very first moment? Luckily, her family is living much better now thanks to Arel, but her current goal is to save up a bit of cash so she can send her little brother to the academy. In the end, she aims to repay Arel thanks to his kindness to her so far. On the other hand, Sana prepares to work out since she is just not sure of how else to do things. Her family has worked as mercenaries for generations. She was raised in a tribe of mercenaries who do not belong to any nation. After the war with the Empire 30 years ago, the mercenary business began to look a bit sour, so Sana was asked to go into the world so she could start a new life for herself. She didn't see any issue with leaving her village or training as a knight, but her main shock came when she heard her father was killed by an evil feudal lord. Just like her father, she was pretty much a classified idiot, like how she would beat the living daylights out of a fellow knight for accusing villagers of stealing and killing them just to get promoted. And honestly, she doesn't regret that moment a single bit. It felt great if anything. Then she just got passed around and ended up getting sent to dangerous areas. After the endless roaming, she eventually applied as a personal guard and then got to know Arel. She has a good feeling about working with him and is very grateful for it. With the background checks out of the way, the two knights head to begin their job for the day. As for Arel, he doesn't seem to have much of a talent in combat, but his skill is unmatched when it comes to learning. He's a certified businessman who brought wealth to the kingdom by selling products, and even helped Kana to become an aura expert, using a theory he developed himself. Of course, his reputation as the young grey sage who does nothing is well deserved. At a meeting, the king and a few other officials discuss the fact Arel will be 14 soon, and the coming-of-age ceremony that will follow. One official suggests that the ceremony will be a good opportunity for Arel since he's using his talents in multiple fields, adding something else about some territories being available. The king gets the hint that they're pretty much saying that they should give a territory to Arel. Obviously, he is angry with this, since it is just an excuse to banish him. It turns out Arel's reputation has spread all the way to different countries, and the speculations that the king will make him the heir to the throne. But the king wasn't having any of that, so he slams his aura-charged fist on the table. He has made up his mind that his heir will be the crown prince. Plus, he already knows that Arel has no interest in the crown. Another official speaks up. He mentions that rumors have already begun to spread, so people are beginning to pay less attention to the crown prince. The duke warns him about something concerning the former king, but the king rises from his seat and silences him. Someone comes over with a bunch of documents from other aristocrats who all share the same opinion. They are all concerned with the imbalance within the royal family. The king takes a look at the appeals and each one of them says the same thing, so it turns out they will have to exile Arel. In defeat, the king acknowledges the concerns and has no choice but to take action. Arel learns what happened in the meeting through a note. He tosses the note aside and he already knows that he's being exiled even with how nicely it is put. However, that is pretty much the best news Arel has had. He is excited to get his own territory. It turns out making himself stand out has finally paid off, and couldn't care less about the aristocrats. Finally, Arel can now make his dream fortress. Well, he is excited until he learns that the aristocrats assigned him to the northern territory of Fahilia. It is a place where snow falls all year round, and the ground is too barren to even farm anything. So, Arel decides that he will leave a month after the coming-of-age ceremony, giving him a year and a month to finish preparations. Since being independent in a different territory is a major task, he expects those who are really prepared to join him. He will find different roles for those who stay back, but he expects those who follow him to move quickly. As the crowd leaves, Arel already figures that the alchemy team and most of the workers are already destined to follow him. Sana has already been ahead of them and was stationed in that area for a year. After all, she gets drafted to different locations like no one's business, and she testifies that the place is extremely cold. With how Sana tries to talk about the location, Arel figures that they might as well be heading for Antarctica with how she's reacting to the place. So much for a nice territory from the ever-loving aristocrats who wanted to exile him, but still, he finds the place to be much better than expected. They could have sent him to a place where surviving for a few seconds will be a world record, so he doesn't find Fahilia to be so bad. Later on, Asha asks why Sena isn't being honest. She knows that Sena was about to say something earlier. Just as she said earlier, Sena explains that the place is pretty cold and empty. Along with being a frozen wasteland, she was actually stationed there to guard against the monsters that can't endure the cold. Asha is more than ready to follow Arel no matter where, but she can't help but wonder if it is okay to follow with that. Sena doesn't see anything to be worried about since she knows that Arel has something up his sleeve. She noticed that he didn't have a look of despair or anything, so she believes that everything will work out. With that said, they finally decide to send a message to their families before they leave. Then there's Arel, who just finished up with his plans. He knows that his mother looks pretty heartbroken even though she hasn't said much. He told the maids not to tell her where he will be stationed. But he can't help but worry about his mother's safety since she'll be alone. Even a princess like Kania got ambushed, so he thinks of a few plans so he can contact her, but eventually decides to think about it later. But for now, he decides to plan the move first. After all, a harsh environment is the perfect place for a reincarnation pro like him to live carefree. He summons a magician, and Phaon shows up with his disciples. He never expected someone familiar to show up. Either way, he asks him to keep a secret, and passes a plan for an item that he would like to be created. Phaon takes a look at the plan, and he is instantly shocked by what he is seeing. He wonders if Arel drew it, and he did. Only that he made a few modifications to an artifact he gave to Kania, but his design will make it twice as effective and reduce production costs by 90%. Of course, this fact is very impressive to Phaon. Arel asks if he can make it, and Phaon mentions that it will be possible as long as he has the right materials. But one problem is that he knows the creator of the original artifact, so he doesn't want to make a rip-off of someone's work. Arel notices his hesitation, so he decides to give him a little something to guarantee results. So he hands over several fat bags of cash, and moral ethics has left the chat. The man and his disciples instantly fold and are prepared to work. After witnessing the power having tons of cash has to offer, Arel wonders if it can be finished within a month. Then he takes a look at his current investment and figures that Phaon could be suitable as his personal magician. Arel learns how fast money can make people work when Phaon presents the newly created necklace to his boss a few days later. He never expected it to be finished in 10 days, plus the quality is pretty good. However, his workers are obviously overworked. Since Arel likes it, he suggests that they start mass production. As Phaon asks how many, one of the workers prays that it is only 5, but I guess they aren't going to get any form of sleep when Arel uses 50, and that's just the starting point. With that, they head off to slavery. I mean work. Arel already understands their pain, but dying 100 times still seems bad enough. For the next step, Arel heads out with Asha in a carriage. She wonders where they are headed and suggests that he could have sent someone for the errand, but he insists to pick things up by himself this time around. Arel eventually reveals that they are headed to a slave market, and Asha is obviously shocked at this information. She figures that he has probably gone mad with power already. But Arel tries to convince her that there is an explanation. Asha gets an idea that her boss might be starting up cotton fields with this one, or probably coal mines or something. But Arel knows that there is no way he's like that. At least that's what we think. With how far she took her imagination, Asha apologizes for it since that's not how Arel works. Normally, when you imagine a slave market, you'd think of a place that could be worse than hell or something like that. You know, shattered dreams, endless torment, fate worse than death, stuff like that. But in reality, at least in this novel, it is surprisingly pretty tame. Even Arel is shocked about this. Of course, it would be a shame if one random slave caught some strange disease and spread it around, which explains why it is very neat. A person comes by and reveals the place to be the best slave market in the capital. He welcomes Arel and introduces himself as Ian, the manager of the establishment. He shows his Arel and Asha around the place and explains about the slave market that is completely legal, by the way. The people who become slaves are people who must have either failed to pay up taxes or belong to families that were destroyed. A person doesn't immediately become a slave after any of these, but at least there's a lower chance of starving if they become a slave. Then there are the criminals. But Ian suggests that there is no need for Arel to pay them any attention. Arel notices that Ian is filtering out the criminal slaves since he is royalty, but it is still fine for Arel either way. Finally, Ian takes a seat in his office and asks Arel for what he might need. He needs a large number of slaves. Ian asks how many he would need, and Arel says he needs 150, a number that shocks Ian. Arel wonders if the number he mentioned is too much to handle, but Ian can handle it since the place also has other branches outside the capital. He can't help but wonder why Arel needs that many. But the young prince assures him that he won't do anything bad with them. Yet. Also, he lets him know that he would like slaves who are familiar with each other in groups of at least 4. While that is a pretty difficult request, it isn't unusual for groups to become slaves all at once. With a snap, piles of documents are brought in. Arel has a look at some of these documents and needs slaves who can read and write. Plus he also asks for them to be transported to a certain location. With negotiations done, Arel asks Asha to unveil the goods that make every businessman drool on the floor. Now things are pretty much guaranteed for Arel as he is instantly promoted to top VVIP customer. On the way back, Asha wonders what Arel needs the slaves for, since having hundreds of them isn't something anyone can do on a casual Friday night. Arel reveals that he wants to make them residents of his new territory. In addition, he is going to give his new mana necklace thing to the slaves and educate each of them from there. Asha never expected that to be his plan, so she can drop all the weird thoughts now. Arel plans to transform the terrain from a frozen wasteland to a dream kingdom. I mean, he just wants to live life comfortably. Everything he's doing now is just to live the best lazy life ever. He will also nurture the ones who will work in Fahilia and build the greatest paradise anyone has ever seen. One morning, Arel lies on his bed thinking about all the preparations he has to make to get independent, and the fact he has to say goodbye to everyone he loves. Then there's a knock on the door, and it's his mother. She rushes over to give her son a hug. She suggests trying to talk with the king about the relocation once again, but Arel tells her not to worry and promises to visit often. Even with the fact he has a year left to go, his mom is still sad that he will have to go. Then a maid comes over to carry her away. Arel doesn't want to reveal his new location to his mother until he has settled down, and will definitely put her mind at ease when the time comes. It's a peaceful afternoon. Well, it was until a knight gets casually launched into orbit. A few other knights tremble in fear at a person. It turns out that person is Kania, who is incredibly angry. She calls for her next victim and tells them to come at her with everything they have or they may not see the next day. She is angry about the fact of Arel being sent away. She understands the whole situation surrounding him, but still can't help but get angry about it. But more importantly, she is upset that he never told her anything for the past 6 months. Then she launches another poor knight into a wall. She thinks it's because he can't change his fate, but he actually just forgot. She doesn't plan to let him leave so easily. On the other hand, the knights are terrified at her aura. According to Arel's manual, the mana circulating one's body moves faster if a strong emotion builds up. And just like that, she ended up becoming the youngest swordmaster in the history of the kingdom, and the third one in the world, all thanks to being annoyed by her little brother. Arel thinks about his first life, especially how time flew by when he was in the military. Now he's getting the same feeling as he's preparing to become independent. Arel is finally 14 years old, and his coming-of-age ceremony has begun. He gets greeted by several aristocrats, but on the inside, my guy is dying of heavy boredom. There are even more aristocrats than his first birthday. Back then, he could easily pretend he was asleep, but now there is no escape for him. He is sure that the participants are rejoicing over the ceremony, well, rejoicing that he's getting sent away. Who would care about his well-being? Anyway, listening to them is starting to annoy him, and wants to wreck everything. But he decides to hold back for his mother's sake, and overlooks everything that's happening. Shortly, Queen Elia comes over to congratulate Arel, and mentions the fact he will be heading to another territory. This lady is obviously trying to get on Arel's nerves, so he stands up and responds in the calmest way possible. He bows and mentions that it would have happened to him either way, so he thinks of it as an early chance to serve the kingdom. With a smirk, she reveals that Jael's swordsmanship has improved thanks to him, and gives him a coat made using the fur of a fox from Fahilia as a gift. With that, Arel has found the person behind his exile. He figures that someone like Jael isn't the type to target anyone politically. Plus Elia is the only possible one who could obtain the complaints from all the aristocrats. He figures that her giving the coat is her way of mocking him, but he has to remain calm, if not he will lose face. So he puts up a polite act saying that he has already bid his brother farewell, and will come to his aid since they share the same royal blood. On the surface, the conversation appears very cheerful, but Arel couldn't care any less and will definitely make her pay. But they will not show how much they hate each other, and exchange the fakest of laughs. The banquet is finally approaching a close, and Arel feels like he forgot something. He takes a look at Kania, who looks unnaturally quiet. He figures that she must still be angry for telling her about his departure pretty late, so he decides to apologize to his sister. But she makes the first move. From her face, he already knows that she is up to something. She runs off, and Arel can tell that what she's going to do is going to be reckless. Kania approaches her father to talk with him and reveals that she will follow Arel to Fahilia. This shocks the crowd, and Arel figures that she has pretty much wrecked the whole event at this point. He takes a glance at her mother, hoping that she is going to stop her daughter, but she doesn't look interested at all. The king gets annoyed by Kania's action and asks what her plan is after that. Arel figures that saying that was already a bad move since she'll only fight back harder, but he wonders the same thing about what she plans to do by following him. For the moment of truth, she reveals that she is going to become Arel's knight, and the soon-to-be ruler instantly punches himself in the face. The king calls her ambition ridiculous since becoming a knight isn't something someone can do so easily, but she is confident in her abilities since she has reached master level. Of course, everyone is surprised since that's obviously a huge achievement, but the king doesn't believe her since she's still 19 years old, and the only person who reached master level at that age was the first king. To prove him wrong, she snatches a sword from a nearby knight and prepares to demonstrate her ability. With her aura charged up, she slices a cake from a distance along with the table perfectly in half. Of course, Arel is shocked about why she's doing this in the middle of the banquet. From that display, the people have seen that she really is a swordmaster and they are amazed. Kanya talks with her father about the fact Arel will be given a territory, while she will have to marry someone. So instead of following that, she wants to become a knight. In a normal scenario, Arel would have applauded her speech, but the situation is too serious for that right now. She is pretty much resigning as a princess in front of all the aristocrats, and even if it was all a joke, the damage will still remain. But there's also the possibility that she caused the scene on purpose. Arel realizes that it was all planned out so no one could easily cover the situation up. How she cooked up this plan makes him wonder where she learned to be so conniving. But the answer has always been him from the start. He tries to stop her, but Kanya decides to take things up a notch before he can do anything. She then walks towards Arel with the sword in her hand and kneels before him. From there, she pledges her allegiance to Arel and vows to be his knight. Arel recognizes what Kanya recited to be a knight's oath, but it's uncertain if the pledge counts since Kanya is a princess and not actually a knight. Plus, she doesn't have his consent yet. But the much bigger issue for Arel is the audience that is now facing them. The kite's oath is something that not anyone gets to say freely, so the fact that an aura master said it will make people think the pledge is official. Arel already knows that Kanya didn't do it for him, but she has already planned the path she wants to take. Of course, this action shocks several people like the king and her mother. Even Queen Elia is boiling with anger over this. Normally, Arel would be happy about that, but he just feels like crying about this right now. One thing or another always goes on during his birthdays, so he should probably forget about hosting them from now on. Despite a few issues, everything went on as always, like Arel packing up for his journey. With that, the time has finally come to head on his way. His mom mentions how he has grown so fast. Arel tells her not to worry and promises that he will visit her. Eventually, Arel decides to tell his mom where he is going. And she already knows thanks to her mother's senses are way too OP even for a reincarnation pro. However, she is still confident that her son will excel wherever he is. So, she hugs him and tells him that she loves him like a good mother would. Of course, what kind of a son wouldn't love his mother back after saying that? Arel's convoy heads on its way through the frozen wasteland that is Phathilia. However, Arel seems to be a bit unsettled about this. After all, he is going to an Iceland where no one has ever gone to settle. He witnesses a bit more of the aristocrats' love when he asks someone to dig the ground, but they must be digging bedrock because the pickaxe bends on the first impact. But still, Arel really wants to prove them wrong and is determined to turn the place into a paradise. Arel finally sticks his head back in the carriage after putting his head out for some unknown reason. Luckily for him, he invested in a magical heating device. Plus, he also has the coat to keep him warm. But Kanya mentions that the carriage is already warm and calls him a noob that can't endure the cold. But what Arel finds strange is his sister. She's such a savage that she's wearing a normal dress in a place that petty cold. However, Arel takes a closer look and finds out that Kanya is using a cheat code to stay warm. He never taught her how to use aura to insulate her body, so he wonders if she is doing it out of instinct. He finds her talent scary, and Kanya thinks that it's something everyone does, confirming how much of a pro she is. But letting Arel's guards know about this might probably make the two of them cry as they casually freeze outside. With that aside, Arel asks if Kanya will eventually regret her decision, but I bet she took the question the wrong way as she stares daggers into Arel's soul. She pinches his cheek and he clarifies that he was wondering if it was okay for her to come so suddenly. It turns out that the king and Arel spent an entire day thinking and decided that she would come along as an apprentice knight. After that, everyone tried to change her mind, but she refused to listen to anyone. She actually doesn't regret coming along. If anything, she finds it to be the perfect opportunity to escape. If she remained at the palace, she would have gotten married soon. Kanya is 19 years old now, and Arel is amazed that she made it so far without getting engaged to anyone, so he wonders if that's actually why she decided to venture with him. Just like him, she hates walking along a set path, so it doesn't surprise him about why she came along. Basically, Kanya is in search of her own freedom. With that, Arel finally arrives at the gate of his new kingdom. He takes a look at all the people who are currently present under his command, and he figures that he has a great start already. So, it's officially time to start building a paradise.